Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the masterclass on the ABC Pump. I'm very glad that you've all decided to join us this morning. Also very appreciative because for me and for my team, it signals an interest in submitting really, really quality applications to the Jobs Fund. You've all seen the latest unemployment stats. We've seen construction and the trade sectors being major contributors to the increase in the unemployment rate. In this funding round, as you all know, we want to tackle the green economy and we want to tackle the informal economy. And we know it's going to be a really tough funding round because in terms of the methodology that the Jobs Fund deploys, and that is working with strategic partners and intermediaries, we know that there are not always sufficient intermediaries operating in these sectors. And while there is a huge demand in those particular sectors, and those sectors have great potential for job creation, we don't have many aggregators operating in those ecosystems, and that capacity building is required. And so we know that it's going to be a challenge. The Jobs Fund, of course, works with strategic partners so that we can deepen our reach and work with experts in the field. So I am very appreciative that so many of you have decided to attend this training. You will know if you have participated in the last two sessions that everyone is muted in the session except the presenters. We encourage you to post your questions in the chat, and if there's something that has not been clear, to advise us in the chat. I'm also going to refer you to our frequently asked questions that you'll find on our website. And these the details: jobsfund.praxisgms or www.jobsfund. Those frequently asked questions have come about as a result of the many interactions that we've had with potential participants and applicants, right? So we've taken our guidance from the kind of questions that you have put to us, and we have prepared that document with the Jobs Fund's answers to that. So, in previous sessions, lots of questions about what is double dipping, what is matched funding, defining a job, etc., etc. What is the eligibility criteria? All of that information you will find there. So again, a warm welcome to all of you. It's going to be an intense session. Next slide, please. Some of you might know already, I'm the head of the Jobs Fund and my name is Najwa. You can move to the next slide. Thank you. Right. So in the session that we had on on Tuesday, right, we covered the activity-based costing project implementation monitoring plan, ABC PIM, right? But this session, we will go a little bit more into more detail, right, on how to complete it. And we thought this was important, and the detail that we are going to cover, it is also, it is as a result of, and it's triggered by some of the questions that you have put to us. And we thought it would be important then to also, try and cover that today in more detail. I want to advise that this ABC pump, right, it really is the backbone of your project. As you work through it, it sets out your theory of change. It sets out your results chain. And, at the beginning, you will find it frustrating. And I'm going to warn you that you'll find it frustrating. And you will level all kinds of accusations at the jobs fund. At the end of the process, though, at the end, if you are a successful applicant, and at the end of, your project implementation and your partnership with the Jobs Fund, I can assure you, you're only going to have positive things to say about this, because this sets out the broad framework for how you're going to implement your program over 3 years. And it also attaches then the detailed budget and your disbursements, your quarterly disbursements. All of that will happen within the framework of this document. So I encourage you to listen well, to ask the questions, and hopefully we are able to answer all those questions today. Thank you so much. Next slide, please. I think I'm handing over to Xavier now, he's the Jobs Fund Project Director. Thank you, and good luck, everybody.
Thank you very much, DDG. A very good morning to all. Can I just get some thumbs ups to confirm if I'm audible enough? Okay, those thumbs are coming. Excellent. Thank you. A very good morning again. I think like the DDG did indicate, today we are covering the ABCP Masterclass. I think I did mention last week, on the 13th in our training session, that to me, once a project is approved and I'm in hold of the grant agreement and the ABC PIMP, that's all that I need for the project. The ABC PIMP tells me everything about the project. It tells me all the activities that are expected, the timing, and what is the associated costs and so forth. So it is the real document that is very, very important, that really explains the theory of change of the project and the logic of how the project flows, the cost and the assumptions, and the importance of, and then begin to see, oh, okay, we are missing this target because this assumption that was here or that was made is not holding true, or so forth. So it is very, very important that we have this masterclass session. Our first speaker is going to be Zamile. We'll start with a recap of the issue that we covered last week in terms of the importance of theory change. How do you link all this to the ABC PIMP before we go into the actual example of completing an ABC PIMP? Zamile, over to you. Thank you.
Good morning, all. My name is Zamile Ngubo. I'm representing the Jobs Fund. So today's session is about completing other sections of the ABC PIMP. On Tuesday, we have demonstrated on how to complete activity categories, outputs, assumptions. So today's session will be about we'll demonstrate how to complete assumptions, targets, the program indicators. So everything that we'll be doing today will be based on the case study that was shared with the registered delegates. All those who registered have received the case study. So the example or the demonstration that we'll be doing today will be based on that. So it will be me and my colleague Thabiso Thebe who will be covering the financing section of the ABC PIMP. So before we go there, we will just recap on what we have discussed on Tuesday, the 13th of May, 2025. So we are mapping out the results chain and defining the theory of change in general. Next slide, Memo. Next slide, please. So the APC PIMP is based on the results chain and the theory of change. So we define the theory of change for an initiative as how the project or how the activities undertaken by a project will lead to the intended or observed impacts. So it is important to establish a solid theory of change for your project because it identifies the conditions or preliminary results in your project that are needed to achieve in a long term. Whilst the results chain is a diagram that maps out your theory of change because it depicts the causal linkages between the project and the anticipated outcomes and impact. It links the inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes, leading to the desired impacts. And therefore, the theory of change provides the big picture of the initiative and summarizes work at a strategic level, while the results chain illustrates at implementation level the causal links in the change process, meaning that the activities, outputs, outcomes, and impacts. And this is what the APC PIM attempts to map out. Next slide, please. The APC PIM tool assists projects in determining the activities a project will undertake and the costs and outputs associated with those activities. This is a tool that is utilized by the Jobs Fund together with the Jobs Fund partners. All activities must follow a chronological order. For an example, an advertising for a post should not happen after you have hired for that position. Once approved, the APC PIMP will become an annexure to the grant agreement because APC PIMP is a contracting document with all those that are partnering with the Jobs Fund. As the project director, Mr. Edziwa, said that if you've got APC PIMP and the grant agreement, we are good to go in implementing the project. Next slide, Memo. To understand how a project aims to effectively achieve the proposed outcomes, the Jobs Fund requires a clear map of project results chain because we are implementing a rational budgeting approach. The APC PIMP assists in determining activities a project will undertake and the cost outputs associated with those activities. These questions, after you have completed the APC PIMP, will be answered. The question of what will the project produce and when will activities take place, and when will the related costs be incurred? What is the project cost? How will the project's cost be financed? What are the project's overall objectives? And again, unlike traditional results chain, the APC PIMP details the timing of deliverables and costing of those project activities. Next slide, Memo. So we have, from Tuesday session and today, we have mapped out the results chain. So we have covered activities. So it is important to understand that when covering activities, you identify the logical flow of key activities that your project will undertake during implementation. You identify the anticipated outputs from those activities and the timing of delivery. Then you cost those activities. Then that will lead to the outcomes. You outline the outcomes and the end goals, including the timing of the realization of those outcomes. Next slide, Memo. So let us explain in detail now the activity categories. So these are the characteristics when you identify an activity category. So these are broad milestone steps taken toward completion of a task. For an example, recruitment of small, medium enterprises, selection of those, training of those, and funding of those. So these are broad activities. Each activity category is typically made up of related sub-activities. So these are smaller tasks that must be undertaken to achieve the main activity. Next slide, Memo. Sub-activities, the characteristics of those, these are supporting activities broken down into smaller tasks. So these are supporting the main activity categories. So we have demonstrated on Tuesday. Again, today we will be doing that during the live demo, during this session. Next slide, memo. Outputs. Outputs are as a result of achieving a sub-activity. And it is important that we express outputs in the past tense. Outputs must always be expressed as already having been achieved, always expressed with a unit of measure. Outputs in the APC PIMP must be expressed using a unit of measure. This is to allow for the ease of interpretation of associated numeric targets nominated. So the overall milestone output must capture the essence of what activity category aims to achieve. We will again demonstrate this during the demonstration segment. Next slide, memo, the assumptions. So the assumption refers to conditions, circumstances that the applicant is assuming must exist for an output to be achieved. For an example, when you're developing a recruitment strategy, you assume that the organization can easily access capacity to undertake that task. When you identify an SME cohort, you assume that the organization has tools necessary to identify these, and they exist in the first place. They should be reasonable with a high likelihood to hold. These must be accompanied by a mitigation strategy. For an example, if you are implementing a project, for it to be successful, you would assume that there will be a community buy-in. There will be an interest to those that are targeted to participate into the program, because without participants, there's no project. So the assumptions are based on that. Next slide. The targets. This relates to a single output that is associated with a single sub-activity. These should never be expressed as measuring two or more outputs, meaning that you cannot measure two outputs in a single row of the APC PIMP. We'll demonstrate that when we complete the APC PIMP example. These are expressed in a numeric value. They cannot be, there must be no decimals. These are expressed as a whole number. For an example, you cannot have a 1,5 job created. One job, not 1,5. This correlates to the unit of measure associated with the outputs. All targets in a single row must relate to the unit of measure expressed with output. We will again demonstrate on how to do that. And these must be entered as a unique single instance value and not cumulative. For an example, if you are training people, if the intention is for 50 to complete per quarter, the targets cannot be expressed as quarter 1, for an example, 50, quarter 2, 100, quarter 3, 150. No, you don't report cumulatively. Next slide, memo. The project-specific indicators. So the Jobs Fund has a set of program indicators. So the applicants are expected to nominate their own project-specific indicators. These are not defined by the Jobs Fund, but you propose and nominate your project-specific indicators. These are milestone indicators. These track the milestones the project needs to reach in order to meet project objectives. Then there are also sustainability indicators. These assist us to assess if the participants will continue with the program, or for an example, number of SMEs still in operation. That is a sustainability indicator for the participants. Then there are also sustainability indicator for the intervention itself. So we want to assess if the intervention will continue post the Jobs Fund involvement. We will again explain this in detail when we demonstrate making use of the APC PIMP. Next slide. So now I will be sharing the APC PIMP. Before I do that, Mr. Edziwa, are there any questions that are coming from the attendees?
Thanks very much, Zamile. Most of the questions that are coming are relating to whether we are going to share this presentation and also where can people find the presentations from the previous sessions. And yes, this presentation will be shared, and the previous presentations are available, and the links have been posted by the team in terms of where to find. If you go on our website and also on the YouTube, you'll be able to find the previous sessions and what is being presented today. I think that's what is commonly coming out, but the team had responded. I just thought I make it clear to all. Thank you.
Yes.
Otherwise, you can proceed, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Edziwa. So we are making use of the case study that was shared with all that have registered to attend this session. So we, in the previous session, have covered on how to complete or how to identify the main activity categories, how to describe the sub-activities and outputs. So let us now focus on assumptions. So we have explained that an assumption refers to the condition that must exist for something to be achieved or for something to happen. So I will just make an example here. So here is an output, number of applicants received. So we have advertised the opportunity for young people to apply. So we are now accepting the applications. So for this output to be achieved, or for us to get 750 applications from the prospective participants of the program, there must be a sufficient interest in the program from the young people. And also, all applications will be received by the closing date. Because if we are not receiving enough applications, it will be less likely that we will achieve this number, because this number is contributing to the overall target as per the example that was shared, or the case study, because the target for this program is to recruit and enroll 500 young people to participate into the ICT skills training program. So for us to get to 500, it means that we must get a number bigger than that, because not everybody will be successful to be part of the program. So that this is how we define or describe or formulate the assumptions. We assume that by the closing date, we'll have a sufficient number to select from, and also there will be an interest from young people to participate into the program. And for us to successfully shortlist the applications, the project staff will take approximately a week to shortlist at least 600. So we must have competent project staff to do that. So that is how we formulate the assumption. It is something that must hold for us to achieve the project objectives. Before I proceed, Mr. Edziwa, are there any questions related to the assumptions formulation?
No question. You can proceed, sir. Thank you.
From assumptions, we will focus on targets. So we said a target relates to a single output that is associated with a single sub-activity. For an example, let me go to activity category number 2, making use of the example that was shared. So here we have now enrolled these young people. So now we must train them. Those who were enrolled must be trained, but for us to train them, there must be training material. So here we'll develop the training curriculum. So the project targets to have only one training curriculum. So the number of curricula developed is 1. So the target is 1. You will see when you move along to the right, the total is 1. There will be only one curriculum that these candidates will be trained on. So a target can be either be in period 1, in period 2, in period 3, or whatever the case may be. Another example that we are demonstrating here is the training that will be done. The participants must be willing to attend the orientation, and the program aims to have 2 orientations for 2 groups. So there's a target of orientation sessions to be held, and the program targets to have 2 orientation sessions during period 2 of project implementation. So you see when you move along to the right, there's 2. This is the target for the total project duration. There will be 2 orientation sessions that must be attended by the program participants. Another example, which will be the last example. So we are targeting to have a number of soft skills training courses. So the program targets to have at least 2 soft skills training. So you see here, during period 4, the training program will have a soft skills training to be offered to the program participants. Mr. Ziwa, before I can proceed to another segment, are there any questions?
All questions has already responded to. I can proceed, sir.
All right. So let us now go to program indicators. The example that was shared, or the case study that was shared with the participants of this session, we were told in the case study that there are program indicators that must be achieved by this project. So the Jobs Fund has its own program indicators that are standard for every applicant or every Jobs Fund partner. So I'm going straight to the program indicators as outlined in the case study. So in the case study, we were told that...
Zamile, just 1 second. Maybe you can just respond to this since you have
Yes.
moved. Okay. There's a question that is, are outputs expected from sub-activities or only the main... Oops, it has just moved up, sorry. Are outputs expected from sub-activities or only the main activity if targets is related to outputs?
Okay, let's go to an example. So you see this output here is a direct result of this sub-activity, because the sub-activity we describe as we have advertised for this opportunity, making use of different medium of advertising. Then a direct result of that is the number of adverts posted. So for the program to be known, or for the project to be known, we had to advertise it. And for us to advertise, there are a number of adverts to be posted. So to answer that, this output, or the output, is a direct result of the sub-activity. And also here, the number of applications received. We see here, people have applied making use of different processes of applying. There's an online, there's a walk-in, but the direct output, the output is a direct result of this sub-activity. If they can please indicate if they are answered adequately.
Okay, let me see. Okay, there's no thumbs up, or maybe they will respond later. Then the last one that is there that I thought maybe could explain is, it says, must the description stroke activities always have to be detailed, or is keywords summary also okay?
Yes, so the sub-activities must be descriptive. You must explain everything, but of course, you can summarize, but the key and important facts must be there. You cannot write down everything, but the key and important facts must be outlined. Yes, they must be descriptive. You must state everything there, because it is assisting us when it comes to costing, as Thabiso will explain, because the costing must be justified by the activities that have been undertaken.
Okay, Yeah, I think we may need just to spend a bit of more time there. So the another question says, within the same example, what is the output of the main activity?
Oh, okay, let me go there. So this is the main activity, is the recruitment of candidates into the program. Let's go to the main output of that activity, and it is directly linked. So here, the number of candidates enrolled into the ICT skills program, that is the main output from the main activity here. So there's a direct link.
Okay, you may proceed, Zamine. Thank you.
I hope that has been answered. All right. So as I was saying, the project case study that was sent out outlined program indicators. So I'm going now. I'm navigating the APC PIMP. I'm going straight to the program indicators. I explained that the Jobs Fund has standard program indicator definitions protocol. So this example is in line with that. So in the case study, we were told that the project, let me go there quickly. We were told that the project aims to place 15 candidates or beyond project partners. Then it will also place 15 candidates in fixed-term placements beyond project partners. Let me explain, or let me give a definition of that indicator. This is now in line with what is on the case study that was shared. And again, we are encouraging the applicants when reading the term sheet, or they can download the term sheet from our website. The indicator definitions are there. They must understand what each indicator means. But in this example, we're told that the project will place 15 candidates beyond project partners. So the meaning of that is the project itself will partner with host employers or with project partners, but there are those companies that are able to absorb or employ the candidates that were trained by our program. But now these partners are not partnering with the organization. So these are beyond project partners because these guys will be self-placing them. After they have successfully completed the training, they will go out and seek employment. So that indicator refers to that. It is beyond project partners, but not with project partners. So in the example, we're told that 15 of those will be placed beyond project partners. Let's go and see. So here, this has been spread across 3 quarters. So during year 1, period 4, 5 of those will be placed beyond project partners. Is either they applied for the opportunity that they have seen. But what is important here is to make sure that that indicator, the total will give us 15 as per the project case study that was shared. So 15 is there. So these are the number of permanent placement beyond project partners by this project example. Again, we were told that number of fixed term placements will be 15 again. This is beyond project partners again, but now the difference between the two, the difference between 2.1 and 2.2, these are the difference between indicator 2 and 2.2 as per this example. These are permanent placements, meaning that it's permanent. But 2.2, the number of fixed term placements beyond project partners, the contract of 12 months or more. So these are fixed term contract positions. So we see here, again, it's 15. You see the total here is 15 for the project duration. We were also told that 136 of the trained candidates will be placed with project partners So with project partners, so this organization will have about 23 off-take agreements with the prospective employers to absorb these candidates after they have completed the training. So we see here the definition of that. Let me give it now. So the definition of placement with project partners is that the organization that will be partnering with the Jobs Fund, for an example, if you want to train and place young people, you will come to the Jobs Fund and make a proposal or submit an application and say, here are the 5 organizations that are willing to absorb these candidates upon completion of the training. So those are project partners. Now, this indicator refers to that number of permanent placements with project partners with which you have signed an off-take agreement with. So you train candidates, then you place them with your project partners as per the off-take agreements we have signed with those project partners. So in this case study, we are told that 136 will be placed with project partners. So let's go there. So here are the quarterly targets. But what is important here is that the total must be 136 after the project closure. Or yeah, this is the contracted target. Then we are also told that 233 of the trained candidates will be placed in fixed-term placements with project partners. Let's go there. So the definition of that is some project partners will be willing to take these candidates on a contractual basis, on a fixed-term contract of 12 months or more. It can be 12 months, 15 months, or 24 months, but they are not permanent. So you have signed an off-take agreement with those organizations saying, okay, after completion of the program or of the training skills program, please give us a cohort of the trained candidates, but we'll place them on a contractual basis. So the important point here is, we see there is 233 as per the case study that was shared. We are also told that the number of candidates to be trained is 475. 475 will be the number of trained candidates. So we've got an indicator speaking to training, number of trained beneficiaries. We go and see here, all of them by period 4, meaning that after or within a year, they will be trained so that they can be placed. Okay, 475 will be trained, then that will give us a contracted target of 475. Mr. Ziwa, before I move to project-specific indicators, are there any questions, comments?
No comments, no further comments raised so far. Thank you.
All right. Again, making use of the case study that was shared, we are told that there are project-specific indicators. I have touched on project-specific indicators that the applicants are expected to nominate their own project-specific indicators. This is now over and above what the Jobs Fund has, because the Jobs Fund, these are Jobs Fund predetermined program indicators. So we expect the applicants to nominate their project-specific indicators. Of course, we'll review those and provide assistance on how to define, because they must be project-specific. They are the ones who are proposing initiatives to the Jobs Fund, so they are the best ones to nominate their own project-specific indicators. When we review the applications, we will assist on how to formulate those. So in the example or in the case study that was shared, we are told that project-specific indicator number 1 will be the number of candidates enrolled onto the program. And that project-specific indicator is 500 in period 1. We are also told that number of participants completing soft skills program will be 475. Let's go to 475. There. we are also told that number of participants completing ICT training will be 475 there. Then we are also told that the number of employers signing off-take agreements, I have discussed the off-take agreements. So here, the project will engage the employers within the sector, the ICT sector. So here, there will be an off-take agreements. There will be off-take agreements with 23 organizations that will be absorbing the trained candidates. So yeah, let me pause there, Mr. Ziwa, and see if there are any questions.
Yes, there is one comment or question. It is, what is an acceptable rate of those who are not placed in a job after training, but finds other opportunities across provinces or studies further?
Or the question is, what is an acceptable rate?
Yes.
Now, the Jobs Fund cannot define an acceptable rate, but of course, when you assume, you will base your assumption on the previous program that you were involved in, because we are looking to partner with the organizations that have experience of at least 2 years. So you will base your assumption on the previous initiative that we have implemented. We cannot predetermine that and say 50% is an acceptable rate. But you will base, when you propose an initiative to the Jobs Fund, in your assumptions, you will base that on your previous program that we have run or previous experience. Yeah, we cannot determine that and say only 20% is acceptable, because projects are unique, they are dynamic, things do change, but you will base your assumption on previous initiative or intervention that we have run.
Okay, thank you. I saw a thumbs up as you're explaining. One last comment, which I think you may talk to. Do you need to produce the off-take agreement upon application, even though the project is not started?
Mr. Ziwa, I think you can take that one.
Okay, so here we're talking about if it was talking about a placement. Here, these are the arrangements that you would have had with your partners. So at the time of application, it is important to demonstrate readiness to implement. So we expect that you have engaged your partners who are going to be the placement partners. Maybe either you're already finalized or you are still there are still conditions that needs to be finalized, but by the time we come to the contracting, those need to have been finalized. But we do accept that when you submit at this stage, there could be maybe letters of interest, but in some cases you already have previous working arrangements with your partners. So it depends at what stage you are with the partners. You can indicate right now indicative letters of interest or the actual agreements if you have, but we do understand that you may not have concluded, but show us the path that you'll be able to meet that by the time we finish the appraisal process. Thank you. Let me just go. So there's something coming down. I think that is, everything else has been responded to. Let me just check if there's anything that needs you talking to. Yeah, no, I think that's all. You may proceed. Thank you.
All right, colleagues, let me proceed to activity category 7, monitoring and evaluation. Let us discuss for a few minutes there. So this is standard for all the applicants and the Jobs Fund partners. This has been pre-populated by the Jobs Fund. So please do not adjust activities and outputs from 7.1 from here to the end. These are not to be adjusted. It is important that applicants budget for reporting to the Jobs Fund during the implementation period, which includes a 2-year post-implementation and reporting. So you budget for that. You will be required to undertake evaluations So let me go there. Number of evaluations to be conducted. Let me first start and say applicants will be, the Jobs Fund partners, after approval, they will be required to appoint service providers to conduct or to support them in M&E activities and also for audit purposes. So you appoint a service provider to assist with monitoring, evaluation, and reporting, and also an auditor to do annual audits. That's one. So the responsibility of the applicants here, while not tampering with this section, they must complete the activity-based costing. So they only give us costing of how much these activities, the M&A activities, will cost. That is their responsibility. And also, these costs will be based on the assumptions and quotations received from their service providers or their suppliers. So yes, they must produce an M&E plan. They must conduct evaluations. They must conduct annual audits, and also they must submit quarterly reports to the Jobs Fund. So our quarterly reports are completed on the grant management systems. Those that are successful will be trained on our reporting requirements. But here the point is, activity category 7 must not be adjusted. We have seen in the past that maybe because it was not clearly explained during these sessions, we will receive an APC PIMP because the applicants will download the APC PIMP from the Jobs Fund website. So by mistake, they will delete everything that is on activity category 7, and these are not meant to be adjusted. I hope that is clear, Mr. Ziwa. Are there any questions on that?
All been addressed. Thank you.
Yes. So upon us receiving the APC PIMPs from the applicants, we review the APC PIMP. So what you are seeing in front of you is the review tab for both the activities and also finance. So the Jobs Fund project team will make comments on your completed APC PIMP, making use of this tab, the review tab. So the only section that must be completed by the applicants is the yellow shaded areas or yellow shaded cells. The white shaded cells are for the Jobs Fund project teams when making comments. So we'll review the APC PIMP and our comments will be on the review tab. Then you only respond to our comments on the yellow shaded area as per the instruction here. The partner to comment in yellow shaded sections only. Then you update the APC PIMP based on the comments you have received from the Jobs Fund. Update the PIMP review sheet to note the updates and date the updates where actions. You see here, you will respond to the comment that has been raised, then you will make a date. So here, the resolution cell is only for the Jobs Fund team to indicate whether the issue that has been raised has been resolved adequately or it requires further action or not applicable. It's only the Jobs Fund that must complete column N or the resolution cell, because this is rolling. We'll have a first iteration of the review, we send it back to you, you respond on the yellow shaded area, you send back to the Jobs Fund to conduct further reviews. Then if we are satisfied, we'll indicate here on this cell and say resolved. If it requires further action, we will say so, saying please fix APC because it requires further action. If it is not applicable, we'll just say NA. Then you will email the APC PIMP to the project team of the Jobs Fund to do further review until the APC PIMP has been finalized, of which you will be told when it's final, because it must be signed by both parties, the Jobs Fund and the Jobs Fund partners. Mr. Edziwa, I will stop there in terms of completing the APC PIMP and see if there are any questions starting from the session that we had on Tuesday up until this point. Any question? Yes.
Thank you, Zamile. I saw someone has a hand up. Please type in your question. Zamile, there is a comment that has been raised, has been responded to, but I think we've seen this as a challenge, or maybe just ask you to answer it for in case other miss. It says, in case of procurement of items for the project, will we be required to produce quotations from suppliers? Say, for example, learners are doing a poetry. Yeah, so basically, do we expect quotations from suppliers if they are doing procurement?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I wanted just it has been responded to, but I wanted just to come clear in case others has missed it. I'm just going through to see if there's anything else. Okay, the question then, when is the activity review to be completed? At application stage or at operation stage?
All right. So after the closing date, we will conduct eligibility criteria or eligibility assessment. Then after those that are proceeding to the next stage of application, those who have passed the eligibility, they will be let know. Then during the appraisal, those who have passed the eligibility criteria will now conduct full appraisal. So Mr. Edziwa will add what I'm saying. We will conduct full appraisal of the application, including the APC PIMP. It is during that period where we'll be reviewing this and having a back and forth with the applicants. You can add there, Mr. Edziwa, in terms of the next steps or when is this happening?
No, I think you've covered it adequately.
Yes.
To say it's when during the appraisal stage, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And it is ideal that we finalize this during that stage. Don't wait for a contracting period. It is important that we finalize these issues before even getting it approved, so that post approval the project implements right away.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm just checking if there's any. Again, there's questions about, are we going to to share the documents? Yes, the documents will be shared, and the links will keep on be provided there. Okay. Okay, there's another point there. Let's see. Yeah, okay, I think that has been responded to. I'm not sure if there's anything else from the other members from the Jobs Fund team that you feel needs to be elaborated further. All right. Thank you very much. So are you done, Zamile?
Yes. For today, we wanted to cover those.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, colleagues. I will now hand back to you, Mr. Edziwa.
Thank you very much, Zamile. I think let's give Zamile a big hand of applause there. Thank you. All right. We now move on to the next section, where we begin to look at the costing side of the things, where Zamile has taken through us the activities, the sub-activities, and so forth. Now we need to look at how then do you cost those activities. Remember, like what I did indicate at the beginning, again, I'll keep on emphasizing the importance. When I'm holding an ABC PIMP and a grant agreement, I have the whole project in my hand. So now we have been told about the activity side. How do you treat it? What are the assumptions? We've been told the importance of the assumptions, and to ensure that there is clarity. We've been informed that we should not be too cryptic. Yes, your assumption can be too long to write the way you want it, but once you summarize, take a step back can the third person understand what I'm saying? Can the third person understand how the flow of my project is, the way I have put? It has to be logical, okay? So now let's look at, we've seen that logical activities. How do we do the costing of it? I now hand you over to Thabiso for this section of the presentation. Thabiso, over to you.
Thank you, Xavier. And I hope everybody is learning as much as possible. And just to know that we will be with you along the journey to assist you with any issues that you may have. So my name is Thabiso Tebe. I'm a financial analyst. I'm also a project manager at the Jobs Fund, and I'll be taking you through the finance sections. So to start off with, we'll start with the costing of activities in the ABC PIMP. So I'm just quickly going to share my screen now. Okay. Great. Please let me know if you can see my screen and whether or not it's visible. All right. So,
okay. So, someone said, please zoom in. Maybe Eldon, would you mind again to come in there just to guide delegates and also how to zoom on their own for easy?
Yeah, thank you, Xavier. Good morning to everybody. So in order to zoom in on the screen, so you can click onto the screen and you can zoom in using your mouse or shortcut keys. This will not disrupt the presenter and will give you the ability to adjust the size of the screen. I'll put something into the chat now as well. Thank you, Xavier.
Thank you. You can proceed, Thabiso.
thank you, Xavier. So, just an overview of today's what we'll be going through today. So today we'll cover cost assumption risks and budget item considerations. Then we'll go to verification and evidencing. Then after that, we'll cover finding schedules and other supporting documentation. And then we'll do a bit of troubleshooting as well as look at some finance comments in the review tab. Okay, so we'll pick up from where we left off yesterday, but just a quick recap. So yesterday we had covered activity 1, and in that activity, we then looked at the cost assumptions as well as issues around timing. So for today's activity, for today's presentation, we'll go through activity 2 first, just to keep the flow there. In activity 2, we're looking at 2.3 here, and this is around the enrolled participants that undergo the soft skills training. And we'll note there that there's also assumptions around the drop rate, which was discussed previously with Zamila. So if we move across from left to right, then it flows into the activity-based costing. In here, we'd have a project description, and then we'll allocate the cost accordingly to the correct score code, and we'll have your total cost, as well as how this cost will be paid, whether it's direct or reimbursement. We'll note that we expect that most of the costs that we're spending will come from the project bank account, but we noted that there are some cases where we would have to reimburse into, say, for example, a corporate account, if those expenses, like for example, in this example, are paid from the corporate account for payroll. We had spoken yesterday about the importance of giving as much detail as possible in your cost assumption. The logic here is that if I look at your cost assumption, I should be able to work back to how you came to that number. In this case, how did you come to the 700,000? Once again, here the information that we have just tells us that it's cost per hour. And the source is from the in-house training based on the payroll that we have. But still, if you look at it, it's still not clear as to how we can get back to the 700,000 here. So another example here is if I go into a different one here for us to be able to see what then that looks like. Here's the second example. Again, same, again, it's also speaking to the same cost. The only difference here is that now we've given a bit more detail. So in this example here, we're saying 350 hours at 2,000 per hour with 50 hours per quarter. So let's see if that helps us to work back to the 700,000. Again, if we go there, 350 multiplied by 2,000, we see there that we get back to the 700,000. And similarly as well, 50 hours per quarter will take us to 100,000 per quarter. All right, and all of these will then add up to the 700,000. And then there will be a check that will talk about, there'll be a check that in column B, which tells you whether or not you've allocated the total cost across the periods correctly. So you'll see in the second line, we have a cost, but we do not have, we haven't allocated the 700,000. And that is one of the checks that you just need to look out for. All right, so now we go into the cost assumption risks. Okay, so what are the cost assumptions risks? These are basically uncertainty about the timing and amount of that cash flow. Right, so in this case, we'll speak about timing issues. So applicants need to consider issues around timing, and some of these would include, common factors would include delays, for example, with municipal approvals, delays in licensing, setup delays such as recruiting the project team, opening a bank account, and also any changes in your assumptions about the timing of those cash flows. All right, one other example that Xavier was referring to, for example, is having those agreements in place. This may not have happened by period one, for example, for whatever reasons, and then you'll see that the timing would have to be shifted to the appropriate quarter. And then cost assumption risks around the amount of the cash flow. So you see in this example here, we assumed that the psychologist will be getting 2,000 Rand per hour. Right, now what if that changes? What if now in the following year, the increases are higher than what was originally budgeted for? That will mean that the amount that you budgeted for the amount that you budgeted for is actually less than what what the amount that was actually paid. And so for those are the things that you need to consider. In doing so, you need to use your judgment and be conservative. Try to use the most likely case. And then if you're not sure, rather be conservative and use the worst case scenario. Next, we'll cover some budget considerations. Okay, so we spoke a lot, in Zamile's segment, we spoke a lot around attrition rates. In this example here, we have assumed that we'll have a 5% dropout. Okay, so 5%, meaning if I expect to get 475 candidates and I have a 5% dropout, okay, how many candidates would I need to recruit onto the program? Well, the answer to that, you'll see the formula in here, but I'll just repeat that. It's 475 divided by 95%, and that takes us to the 500. But now what if the cost was what if the attrition rate was much higher? Meaning that if I use the same formula, my target, which is 475 divided by we divided by my percentage of 90%, that's 100 minus 10%, meaning that now I need to get to approximately 528 candidates that I would need to recruit on the program. But if you see, the difference here is that now I've only budgeted for 50. So for example, if you need to pay stipends, then now you need to go and now you're going to have a shortfall of say another 30, or say another 30 candidates that you didn't budget for. So it's very important, once again, to be prudent and be as conservative and also be conservative in your estimates. We have a lot of issues where projects use the best case scenario, for example, in this case being the 5%, but in reality, their dropout rates are much higher. And especially if we're looking at the informal economy, we can expect that, it's plausible that the attrition rate might be higher than your normal average. So these are important. This is an important consideration into your budget. Next, also consider.
Thabiso,
Yes,
do you mind
please go.
just pausing so that we clear something? There has been a question on reinvestment. Ben, would you want to take that, please, and answer so that everyone can get the explanation?
Thank you so much, PD. Thank you, Liso, and welcome. So you're asking what is considered a reinvestment? Okay, is it mere match funding put in the project bank account, while costs of resources, salaries are incurred in the partner's account? So what is a reinvestment? So remember, we will have to open a dedicated ring-fence project bank account where the match funding and the grant will be transferred into, and spending will happen from there in relation to all expenditure of the project. However, we also then realize that in some cases, for instance, when it comes to salaries, though a portion of salaries is paid by the project, the individuals, they get a full salary from one bank account. So it is that part of project reinvestment, or the portion that is belongs to the project that is now being reinvested in your corporate bank account, so that you can pay, for example, to Liso her full salary of 50,000 as an example. So that is what we call reinvestment. Yeah. So then the next part, you say that where costs are incurred before receiving funding, MF or grant, and when funding is received, it reimburses costs incurred by partners. Okay, so in this case, you seem to be saying that we encourage partners to pay their match funding in advance, and once approved and we are implementing, so you can be ahead on your match funding ratio, and you still have to spend those the match funding in relation to the project within the project bank account. And then going back to reinvestment, whatever would have been indicated as reimbursable expenditure will have to be agreed upon at contracting. I think I've covered, Mr. Zil.
Thank you very much, Ben. I see there's a thumbs up.
Thank you.
There is another comment, maybe it's worth talking to Zamile. There is a question which says cost assumptions for M&E evaluations would be based on sample size. What is the minimum required sample size, the IE percentage, to be covered for ED projects?
So just to make sure that I understand, they are asking about sample size of the cost.
For M&E evaluations.
Sample size. I'm not sure if I'm getting that comment.
Okay, it's basically saying if I'm doing an M&E project, in terms of the costing for the evaluation, and if you link it to project size.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So the norm is the budget for M&E must be at least 2% of the project cost, or the grant that has been approved for the project, at least 2%. I hope that answers the question, Mr. Edziwa. If we can show thumbs up to that participant.
Okay, there's no
Because
thumbs
there's
up,
no-
but I think just to add there, like you said, Zamile, there is a percentage, but we also do assess the plausibility of that, because a 2% of a 10 million or of 100 million becomes it's quite the difference. We then look at the actual cost. We then look at what is the trend on the market when the team does the assessment. So there will be, yes, there's a percentage, but there will be a sort of like a sensitivity check in terms of whether that is plausible or not plausible. Maybe you can get a thumbs up from Lizelle, who had asked the question, if she's covered. I don't see any other question that has not been addressed. Okay. Maybe from the, you can proceed, Thabiso. I thought we just thought those be addressed up front. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. So picking up from that conversation, you'll note that in this ABC PIMP, we're looking at a train in place model, right? So for work seekers. However, we do expect that we'll be having, especially being in the informal economy, we can expect that we'll be having other projects related, for example, to enterprise development, which was just mentioned now in the previous conversation. So there, a key budget consideration would be around social facilitation. So we struggle a lot in getting, financial records for the beneficiaries, because when we do our assessment at the end of the project, we want to know, for example, are these beneficiaries sustainable? Are they earning at least above national minimum wage, or are they earning at worst? Are they earning above your upper bound poverty line? With that in mind, we then need to collect financial information from them to be able to assess that. And a lot of projects struggle with that. So one key budget consideration is think about social facilitation. For example, engaging with the communities, or bringing on, for example, let's say someone from the bank to come and speak with the beneficiaries, but have some considerations around that, as that is an appointed item. So to enable us to be able to collect that financial information about your beneficiaries. Right, then we also spoke about the monitoring and evaluation. And I think one key point that I just want to highlight, especially with the last conversation, is that, remember, we do look at value for money. So we will assess your quote to see and then compare it, what's happening in the market. And one other consideration is also just to note that obviously when the project closes, we expect what we call your summative evaluation report, as well as your closeout audit. And in terms of timing, I just want to also highlight that we do hold back some portion of it related to the closeout audit until the final report is received. So we will usually pay that in tranches. That is one for the draft of each report, and one for the final report that's due within 4 months after the project closes. All right, and of course that will be based again on the amount that has been included in your ABC PIMP, and of course it would have been evidenced, during appraisal by, say, a quote or some invoice from the past, with the necessary adjustments, of course. for the scope of work. All right. And then the second part that's very important is the amounts that you see in here. So this 250,000 is actually representing the cash amount that we'll expect to see in your bank account. So on a quarterly basis, you submit a bank account, which is a part of the evidence that's required when we do our appraisal to assess your spending. And to verify, of course, that you did spend the 250,000. So we will go into, so we use your bank account. So essentially, what you are mapping out here are cash flows. These are cash flows, so you're doing this on a cash basis, and also noting that the amount is inclusive of VAT. So I repeat that once again. I covered it yesterday, but I think it's worth also just repeating that. Please make sure that the amounts that you put into your ABC PIMP represent the actual cash flow that's moving through the bank, and that amount will include your VAT. All right, before I move on to the next section, I just want to check, do we have any questions?
Just checking here. No, I think all questions, I can see the team have responded. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Proceed.
So now we're going to talk a bit about evidencing and verification. All right. During appraisal, especially on your significant costs, please make sure that there's a basis for it or source that we can go and verify. So, for example, if it's a quotation, it should have you know, all the details that we need, so that if we need to go and, for example, do an independent check, then we are able to then verify that this quote is valid, for example. So it would have to have all the details, for example, like a quote number. And then the other thing is then when you evidence and when you submit your evidence, please make sure that we are able to trace it, right? So if you just submit or, you know, submit a whole file with a bunch of invoices and codes there, it means that the appraiser sort of needs to try and sift through all that information to try and find the code. And I think anybody who's done, you know, who's worked in the finance department will know that it's that really makes really just prolongs the process, having to sift through the information. So please make sure that we are able to please reference them if possible, so that we can trace them to the evidence that you have uploaded. All right, and then internal documents, of course. So if the evidence source of that evidence is internally generated, then please make sure that it is signed. And then we look at so in terms of the last part that I wanted to cover here, also related really to enterprise development. Once again, comes to looking at the means of verification. So when your means of verification is this area here, so this would have been covered by Zamilia to do a lot with the activities and those outcomes, but some of those outcomes may be financially related. Okay, and we may, for example, want to track, for example, a means of verification could be that the beneficiary or informal enterprise submits a financial statement, which is all very well, but however, you need to consider, you know, how easy is it to get financial statements again, or what type of financial records? What is the, you know, what is the level of financial literacy of these informal enterprises, for example? And again, that's speaking to the whole concept about around financial, around social facilitation. Okay, so very important that you use the means of verification which is attainable within your project, because we get a lot of delays again around being able to get that that information. as it could be specified as an outcome here. Thank you. So before I move on to the next section, I just want to check, do we have anything there? Any questions?
We are good. We are good to go.
Okay.
Sorry, sorry, Mr. Edzo. So there's a question about clarity on the ring-fence account. Yeah. So I just want to clarify the two. Okay. So we require like to open a physical, an actual bank account, right? Where the grant and match funding will be deposited in, and also all expenditure should be expended from that bank account, and everything else linking to the ABC PIN, right? And then in some cases, applicants and JFPs have asked to have a separate like code, like they've got their own accounting system, financial system, and then they want to create like a code in there or for the project. We don't encourage that, because it means that when we're doing verification now, we might have now to go into your corporate transactions. So we require a separate set of financials that starts from a ring-fenced project bank account. I hope it clarifies that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ben. Any other members from the Jobs Fund who would want to elaborate on something that they've picked?
I think as well, speaking about that project bank account, we often get a lot of requests, can we use an existing bank account? So generally speaking, we'd like you to open up a new project bank account fresh, so that we can track all that expenditure. So the only deposits and payments that are coming out of there are related to the Jobs Fund, the Jobs Fund project. And also noting that any payments or any payments made out of the account before your project start date will not count. So very often you find that projects have made some expenditure with the understanding that this will then be reported. However, and then the problem with that is that we actually don't count that, and then you then find yourself in a situation where you have to put in additional match funding to cover that spend. So very important to note that only from project start date do we start also looking at those payments. All right, so I think with that in mind, we're going to move on to the next section, where I'm just going to talk about defining schedules as well as other supporting documentation. Right. So you may not be able to put in all the detail in front on the face of it, and by the face I'm talking about this sheet here. So what can happen is that you may, for example, let's just say this 500,000 was made up of other line items, and this is really the total cost. So we then encourage you to also insert or complete those schedules, because it's going to enable the appraiser to know once again how you came up with that cost. Coming back again to our cost assumption, if it was just one cost, then you can do it here. But of course, if it's multiple line items, then you then probably would want to use a schedule to support that cost. And these schedules, we'll see them that we've got our project salaries. This one is the one that I covered from yesterday, telling us what is the average monthly salary, the role of the person, as well as the utilization rate. And just to repeat on that note again, utilization rate, we're looking at how much time will actually be spent on the project, okay, or on this particular activity in this case. And you would need to give us a basis of allocation. right? So include in here, for example, if you're going to do that, then include in here to tell us, okay, this is how we allocated it. We had so one project, for example, out of 10, right? And then that's how, we've got 10 projects. One of them is the Jobs Fund project. And so we're allocating 10% to this to the Jobs Fund project, which we will check to see if it's reasonable. We'll obviously ask you for evidence and review as to whether this cost or this allocation basis is reasonable. Then we also have our and this is more related to on-lending projects. This is the loan book. We'd require you to give us how the loan how the loan is expected to perform, or the loan book is expected to perform. And noting that then you would have to then submit this on a quarterly basis so that we can review against what the baseline and be able to make adjustments where necessary. And then the last one is, of course, your transfer schedules. The transfer schedules, basically speaking to the beneficiaries. Now, these transfers could be, for example, subsidies. They could be the loans to the beneficiary. Could be a subsidy, it could be a grant, or it could be a capital transfer. Capital transfer being that we buy a piece of equipment and we give it to the beneficiaries. All right, and then other supporting sheets or workbooks. Right, these basically help the appraiser to understand how the applicant got to the numbers. These can be inserted as sheets or submitted separately as workbooks. We encourage applicants to please submit all relevant financial models to the project. And also in enterprise development programs, we would also need for you to submit the beneficiary financial model. This is very important when we're addressing the concerns around sustainability, is we're going to go into that model and say, oh, okay, so this is how much is assumption. For example, we expect them to sell 1,000 tomatoes at this price, and we expect that their overheads and costs will be this much, including salaries. And then we want to check and say, okay, is this reasonable? Is this plausible? In making our assessment. Okay, so I'll just stop there for now and just ask if we have any questions at this stage.
All questions have been attended to, but I can just check with my colleagues if there is anything that they would want to elaborate more. Okay.
I think Brian wants to answer, and then I can come through, Brian. Okay, your hand is okay. Your hand is up. Anyway, let me come through. There was a question from Sinotolo.
Sorry, Ben, okay. I was muted. I've just been unmuted now.
Sure.
Okay, so I just wanted to add, seeing as sorry, morning everybody, if it's not afternoon yet. I just wanted to add on, seeing as Thabiso has just touched on lending. I think we've primarily spoken about the one project bank account. So I think we need to advise that on lending projects that there is a requirement for a secondary bank account that will be used to transact in terms of the funds that are advanced to the beneficiaries, any repayments that might come through. And over and above that, should the applicant at this stage, when they do become a partner, should they need to add on any other bank accounts to the project, that needs approval from the Jobs Fund itself. You can't willy-nilly go and open a bank account and just start using it because maybe you figured out that no, you want to separate certain transactions and you want to house them in a particular bank account. All that has to come through based on discussions with the Jobs Fund and getting that approval from the Jobs Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So there's a question on, it was posted at 11:16 from Sinokolo. It says, what happens if you approve the proposal before the funding is deposited, how long do you have to have that funding transferred? So here you're talking about match funding. I believe that as we appraise, you will be saying that this is by proof of match funding, and then once we are satisfied, and then if the project is approved, would want you to transfer the tranche that you would have budgeted for the first period. So you have to then to transfer the match funding. So it is at that time that we require you to do that, and then our grant will then also come through. So the match funding has to be transferred ahead of the grant coming through. Just wanted to cover that. I think I've covered all, Mr. Zil.
Okay, thank you. There is another question from Pals. I think they said the specific project bank account was opened for a GF10 project, which was formally ended. Can we use the same ring-fenced for our GF12 application? The response is that if your project is approved, we will go through. There is an internal process where that consideration or the proposal will be made, and there will be consideration to approve the use of your previous bank account or not. Obviously, there's some checks to see is there balance, was it closed, and all those aspects. But the answer is yes, there is consideration, but we'll go through some process if your project is approved at contracting stage. Okay. So I saw something coming through. Sorry, I was answering now. Let me just quickly check if there's any new question. Okay, I think most of the questions we have been addressed. Tabiso, I think back to you.
Thank you, sir. So we've now covered the first part, which was part B, looking at the costing of the activities. And we are going to move on to the next segment, which is part C, looking at the financial tabs. Okay, so for the financial tabs, we will cover the finance plan issues. We'll also be looking at funding allocation and the SCOA auto. Okay, so the financing plan is tab number 3, right, which maps out all your cash inflows, i.e. your grant, match funding, and other sources of income. And then the last one is the other one, the funding allocation, is your 4th tab, which speaks to how you allocate between the various funders. And of course, your SCOA auto, very important document because this summarizes all the costs as well as the output related to the activities. Okay, and on a quarterly basis, this is actually what we measure you against. So if your total expenditure, for example, was projected to be 390,000, we will go and check, did you spend 390,000 in the quarter, or did you underspend, overspend, and what are the reasons thereof? So very important, as this document will have an impact on how your project then rolls out. Okay, so coming back to the financing plan, I think, yeah, so let's just try also make it as practical as possible to see how this would flow in a real life example. You know, let's assume you're going on a short lift and you've planned a holiday, and you've planned all your activities, like applying for a visa from the relevant authorities at home. And now you need to fund these activities. So you probably need to go back to your Treasury department at home again and give a plan on how you're going to finance this. So similarly, on this journey, we're going to take you through on how to make sure that you fund your activities correctly and make sure that you avoid shortfalls or carrying too much cash. All right, so the financing plan is broken down into two primary cash inflows. Your two cash inflows, pardon me, and those are made up of your primary cash inflows as well as your secondary cash inflows. Your primary cash inflows, we're looking at your grant, your match funding being broken down into three sections in terms of your SCOA code C1, which is your own funding contributions, and then contributions from other sources. So this could be your sponsors, for example, or match funding partners that are not the applicant providing the funding, as well as loan financing. And then the last one is non-cash contributions, C4, still covered under match funding. And then these, of course, are non-cash contributions. So in this case here, it's the industrial psychologist who the resource that has been given to the project by the funders or the applicants rather. Right, and then looking at your secondary cash inflows, these would largely relate to one of two things. So in an on-lending project, for example, you'd have interest income and of course your repayments, loan repayments there, and then the interest income, of course, can come as a result of speaking to that secondary bank account where you have a large sum of cash that has been deposited. And because you don't need it all, you may decide, okay, let me open up a secondary bank account so that I can earn interest on it. And that is how then you get your interest here. All right, product sales and services. If this was a place, or this project also did placement, for example, it would earn placement fees, and those expected placement fees would also be included in here. In an ED project or other project, there could just be sales of, in a farming project where we have produce that we sell, and that will also be included in there. Okay, and other earnings. Commonly here we'd have things like your VAT refunds that would come in here, but other earnings basically being anything else that's not included in these sections would be populated there. All right. What we covered yesterday when we went through the session, we said it's very important that these cash inflows are representative of your term sheet or the agreements concerned. All right. So, for example, if we know that the first 1.5 in terms of the term sheet is only going to be paid in period 3, then it means that these cash flows would then start from period 3 to reflect what's in the agreement. All right. Understanding the match funding ratio and really how it works as well during implementation. So a match funding ratio, in this case, we've said that we come with 10 million grant, and the match funding will be 10 million as well. So it means that our match funding ratio is 1:1 in this case. All right. That is your match funding divided by your grants, right? So as you disperse, what we look out for is that you are indeed maintaining your contracted cash match funding ratio. And the question really comes about when people ask how much grant do I need to put in my financing plan in quarter 1, in period 2, for example. Then one guiding item would be your match funding ratio. In other words, after you've made this deposit, after you put in this much and the jobs fund has put in this much, do you still maintain your match funding ratio? That's simply all that is there. Okay, so if we were just going on a 1:1 basis, it would be 1 million as well. However, we need to note that some activities may not be funded by the grant. So in this example here, we had used 500,000 for compensation of existing staff. So if in your allocations, all of this was, for example, to be funded by own match funding, then coming back to your financing plan, and now we're assuming that the 500,000 was going to be paid in period 1, then it would mean that match funding would actually be 1.5, and you probably have 500 being paid in there. So that's just really to explain how it could look like, and this of course depends on the project and how and how the costs have been allocated between the grant and the match funding, as well as when that activity takes place in that period. Okay. So now match funding, when we speak about own contributions, what's important to note there is obviously when we look at your own match funding, one thing that we will require is to see, do you have the financial muscle? In other words, we will go and look at your financial statements. For example, in your balance sheet, we want to check there, are you in good financial health? Are you solvent? Are you profitable? So those are the things that we need to assess. What type of cash are you carrying in there? Because it's not just like now telling us that, okay, we're going to contribute, let's say, for example, in this case, the total amount is 8.5 million, but you've only made 4 million in the past, every year in the past couple of years. So if then you're saying, no, but I expect any invoice. So for example, I've done some work and I've done a big contract and I'm expecting money to flow through, then you'd have to also then just provide that evidence to us so that we can verify that indeed it is plausible that you'll be able to contribute this match funding. Right, and then we look at contributions, of course, from other sources. All right, and these could, in this example here, we have an agreement to fund the project from Vista. And what's also important is, again, coming back to the term sheet, to understand, we will go in and look at the term sheet to see, okay, do these cash flows actually correspond to, for example, your payment schedules in your term sheet. Okay, and of course you can also use loan financing, but just to note that interest, that loan is to, if the loan, for example, is to the applicant, the interest cannot be then passed on to the project. Okay, and we've already spoken about what in-kind is. All right, and a question that's often asked is, should I include in-kind in here? Is it worth it? I mean, the question around it is materiality. That's one thing, and not just quantitatively, but also looking at it qualitatively. So someone having no knowledge of the project and wanted to fund this project, if we went in and this item, it's material and critical to the project, and we try to replicate the project, of course, without knowing that there's in-kind in there, the project will probably fail if that contribution was critical to the project. Just by way of example, to show you what is material. And of course, you would need to evidence this on a quarterly basis when you report. So you would need to send us that information. For example, if it's a cost that you paid for the stationery, for the stationery, then you'll need to submit for that invoice related to that you paid, which of course won't be reflected in our project bank account. But then you'd require the information to evidence that cost. Right, I'm going to stop there and just check, do we have any questions?
Okay, I think all questions have been responded to, but I would just like to check with Ben from a theme's point of view. Is there anything that you would like to elaborate on, Ben?
No, thank you. So there's a question that has just come in that if the application amounts to 5 million, do you need to have all the 2.5 million match funding year one or over the contract period if you are in NPO? So yes, it will be over the period using this ABC PIMP as a tool to plan and spread the costs and spending. I think I just wanted to okay, so but as a point of emphasis is to say that all what we are seeing here is on a cash basis and VAT inclusive. So we don't when we talk of revenue, there's a question that's coming here about revenue. We don't do credit sales or anything credit here, or anything to do with credit sales, and also which are debtors, and we don't do like creditors as well. So everything has to be as you are paying. So the scheduling of your match funding, the scheduling of your grant, of course, but also your expenditure and your project sales, if they come in, it has to be as you receive it in cash. Over to you, PD.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. I think just also to elaborate on that question, Ben, which spoke about the if you apply for 2.5, do you need the 2.5 in year one? Just to emphasize that at contracting, yes, you spread the actual flow of the match funding is tied to the actual flow of the grant funding, but at contracting, we want the evidence that the match funding has been secured by way of whatever agreements one would have entered with the match funder provider, confirming the flows, although they will come on a quarterly basis over whatever period is defined, but we'll need the evidence upfront. And please refer to the application form. It indicates what is required when you submit your application as evidence of match funding at each particular stage. Thank you very much. Thabiso, you may proceed.
Thank you, Xavier. And I think also to add to that is please align with your funders, because we do have cases where there's misalignment in terms of when those funds are expected. So again, you'd probably be finalizing the agreements. In some cases, you'd be finalizing the agreements closer to contracting. But just have it noted that, if, for example, we have a project that's due to start in 1st of April 2026, then make sure that your agreement aligns so that the first tranche or the match funding for that quarter is released on time. Otherwise, we sit with a situation where the project is delayed, could be a quarter or two, or several quarters for that matter, and then the project then falls behind, and it becomes, at high risk of not meeting its contracted target within the specified period. So very important. Timing is a big thing here that we need to know if we're going to say what activities we're going to carry out. If we have planned certain activities and to achieve certain outputs in there, having things like a delay in your match funding will then cause the project to be delayed and the project to fall behind. So The next section that I'm going to move on to is really just around troubleshooting and looking at the review tab, just to reinforce what Zamile has spoken about there. We already have spoken, before I move there, we have already spoken about the SCOA Auto. Again, you'll be keeping an eye on this as you are moving through your activity output outcome cost, which is basically pulling through in this section under planned expenditure, and your financing plan, which is being pulled in this section under planned income. And of course, it uses those SCOA codes that we were referring to here to allocate it to the correct account. Okay, so funding allocation, again, coming back here, is the structure of this is such that, okay, this information is being pulled from your financing plan. So what we need to make sure is after we finish allocating, right? And again, this is speaking to the issue around funding gap. You know, what is the grant going to fund, or the things that it doesn't fund, then will have to be funded somewhere else. And this is where you do that exercise. All right. So what's very important here is often you find that two things. One, the cost is not fully allocated. So I go and I allocate 300,000. All right. And what you would then find is after you've done your exercise is that an error check message comes up to say, look, there's 200,000 missing. And then you have to go, and sometimes it can be a iterative process. This is like now the accounting part where you go and review your cost line items. You may have already fully allocated the grant here. Okay, let's just make an assumption, for example, 7950123. So you fully allocated your match funding in this case. And we then still have a difference that's coming in. Let's see here. So match funding, and we're looking at the column under own match funding. So we need to get to 8.5 million, right? But we've only allocated 550,000. Therefore, we need to go through the exercise of allocating everything until this clears. And a useful tool that I use as well quite often is if, for example, there's a cost that's missing, and I'm trying to reconcile it, then I'll just take all the information in here. Let's just go to data, filter that. So I may, for example, want to know how much is going to salaries in total. Where am I short? And of course, this would then help to help you identify that. So if I just filter then, I go look at salaries, and there we go. So I'm supposed to allocate 500,000 into salaries. So then if I go back to my funding allocation, then I know, okay, no, so I'm supposed to do 500,000. Okay, or let's say now I haven't allocated the full grant. Let's just say I am, or the full, match funding amount. So for this example, let's just say I have allocated 8 million. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Pardon me. Right, so there's 500,000. And if I go and look, I'm going to just remove these just to make it simpler. All right, so I've allocated, in total, I'm short of 500,000. But I go and look, let me actually do this first. The 500,000. Here we go. So what then happens is, let's say, for example, I've left out the score, the score code. So it actually doesn't pull through into my funding allocation. Okay, and then when I've looked through this, I've checked. So now I'm looking for the expense line, and I want to know, where is that 500,000? And of course, through the sheet, I was able to identify that we had, in this case, this wouldn't have been there, that we have some salaries in here. But when I go and look at my funding allocation, there's nothing there. You can see there because I've removed those cover codes. And then that will tell me, oh, okay, I need to go back and make sure that I have my codes in there. So as soon as that is done, then you'll see in your funding allocation, the 500 comes. And if I allocate it, then I've allocated everything. And similar, if I move across, then I've also allocated the full cost as well. Right. Any questions before I move from this sheet or this tab, rather?
So far on the chat, nothing. But I'll just I see there's a hand up. May you please type in your question? Okay. There's a question now, which says which should be done first, the funding split or activity costing?
Well, in logical flow is, remember, everything is driven by your activities. And those activities, then you cost them to get the total cost of the project. Now, once you know what the total cost of the project, then you know how much you need to fund, right? So now I need 20 million. Where do I get it? All right. And then that takes you to your financing plan. Okay, to say, so this is how I'm looking at funding it. And then, of course, you come here to the last sheet in your funding allocation. So in that sense, this would be the last one that then you go through to say, okay, and remember, you're doing this exercise, of course, as you are also doing your activity outcome, looking at the detail to say this line item, depending on your term sheet. So the flow would be, then you take, okay, here's how much I have. And according to my term sheet, this is what the match funding can fund. So an example for that is, let's say you had stipends in here. All right, I'm going to just move this thing to reflect as stipends. There, okay. So if I go there and I say, okay, this is stipends. So now you see in here, there's the stipends. I'll just increase that a little bit. Okay. And then I read my term sheet, and my match funding agreement says it's only going to pay 50% of the stipend. In other words, the funder is only prepared to pay 250,000. Okay, then that means that the gap is 250,000. So then you would go and slot on the ground to say we need 250,000. I hope that answers you. Just to check in. Can I get a thumbs up if it makes sense? Okay, we also got Brian coming in. Please, Brian, go ahead. Sorry, Chair, back to you. We've got a hand up from Brian.
I think you can proceed, Thabiso.
Yeah, my hand wasn't up. I think there's a ghost flying around.
Okay, please proceed, Thabiso.
Thanks, Thabiso.
Okay. All right. Okay, no, that's fine. Must be a financial ghost, Brian. But yeah, so that really comes to the last takes us to the last tab, the review tab. So you remember in the beginning, we had assessed one of those costs, this being that one there. So if I had received it initially, then we'd go back and then say, okay, we can't calculate this. We need more information. So if you go back, please take note where it's located. This is in activity 2. All right, so if we go to our review tab, I'm going to decrease that. We've got section 1 here, and then we've got the activities. Here we're looking at activity 2, right? So what you then get when you get the version back, all right? And remember, please, just on that note, version control, very important. And that's that tab here. So you see, as it processes, we need to make sure that we track which version is which. Okay, so anyway, when you get it back, so for example, you had submitted version 0.1 in this case, and that's another update. So we then get it back and we send you, say, version 1.1. And then when you get back this version, then what you then have under that activity 2, you'll find that there's a comment in there. We'll also have a reference for where it's located. So in this case here, it's in cell AK41, right? Activity 2. So if I go and look there, AK41, then you're able to trace the exact cell that we're referring to. And then for finance, you'd find that it's usually your FA who will comment on that and the date that they did. And of course, when you receive it, there'll be nothing here because that's your section, partner's response. And then it would be, it would have a resolution status of requires further action. Then it goes to you, let's say, then you update it accordingly and you change that to this one. You give more information, then you would then make your response, give us your response. In this case, you've said your cost assumption is being updated with the calculation of 350 hours by 2,000 to give us a 700,000. And we go and review and we say, yes, we can work back to that. We're happy. Of course, you give us a date on when you submit. Then we will go back, and if we're happy, then we change the resolution status to resolved. When we're finished with the whole exercise, then everything here must be green. Of course, if it still requires further action, then we take it back to you for you to resolve it. And keeping in mind version control. So after you've resolved it, you will then send us back the next version number, say in this case being 1.2 for us to review. Or maybe in this case here, it was just going around the organization internally, and then you send us version 1.3 or version 2 rather. Okay. And that concludes the finance segment. I just want to check at this stage if we have any further questions.
Okay, and now I don't see any comments, new comments, but I'll just check with Ben. Ben, is there anything that you would like to emphasize?
Yeah, I think it's been emphasized already, the issue of version control. Yeah, it's critical. It's been emphasized. I think all is covered for now, Chair.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Tabiso, you're done, confirm?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So Tabiso has taken us to the end of the costing section, and we are 10 minutes ahead of schedule. May I propose that maybe we're supposed to go to the break time at 15:15. Can we go on break now for the 15 minutes, which is 5:12 now, then we come back at 12:20. So we'll also be able to finish earlier. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, I see thumbs up. Okay, so we'll break for a 15-minute break, then we'll resume at 12:20. Thank you. Okay, it's now 12:20. I think we've taken a break. Let's just see those thumbs up that we are back. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. I see there's a hand, but maybe that's supposed to be a thumbs up. Again, just to repeat that we will be posting, you'll be able to access the recordings of today through our website, and the links have been posted, including the previous presentations. Okay, we now proceed to the next section. Thabiso was he covered a lot of section, including what we're supposed to cover just after break. I'm just reconfirming that. Thabiso, reconfirm you are done everything, nothing else to add. Thabiso? Okay. All right. We move, however, to the next stage, which now Helena take us through. Apologies. Actually, maybe we should have just continued and finished. I thought Thabiso was going to say more, but Thabiso says it's done. So, Helena, over to you.
Thank you, Xavier. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you're all well, and thank you for bearing for us. I know it's a lot of information that has been discussed today. We're just going to do a little bit of a recap what was discussed during Tuesday's training session, and also just give you the key dates. So first of all, just take note that this application window closes the 5th of June at 3 o'clock sharp. So please, that is a hard cutoff. No late applications will be accepted. So what must you submit with your application? What we've been talking about today, the completed ABC PIMP, the due diligence documents, and this must be complete with documentation for the FICA and legal assessments, and all uploads are compulsory. Then what's going to happen after this funding window closes, we will assess the applications, and then applicants will be informed of their eligibility status via GMS. Then the eligible applicants will be informed of the dates for their due diligence engagements, and this can be on-site or virtual, and this will depend on our risk assessment of the application. And each applicant will be allocated a project appraiser, and that person will undertake the project appraisal, and he or she will be your main point of contact, but you may also engage his or her manager directly, but always copy the project appraiser in all correspondence. This is very important, and the project appraiser will contact you once the allocations have been made. And we encourage all applicants, please, to be responsive to the queries, as the appraisal process must be completed within a set time frame, and failure to do so may negatively impact on your application. And the contracting will take place once the Jobs Fund's Independent Investment Committee approves the application at stage 2. Next slide, please. Then during the application, we will provide support and guidance to complete the ABC PIMP, the application on GMS, and how to upload all the required documentation. But please take note, as we said on Tuesday during the training session, and also as we said today, that is your responsibility to complete the ABC PIMP. And you may engage us for assistance and guidance, but the Jobs Fund team is not going to complete the ABC PIMP on your behalf. Then, as we said already, during the appraisal process, applicants may be contacted by the Jobs Fund team to obtain further information. And what are we going to look at during the appraisal process? The state of readiness of the ABC PIMP, the completeness of the due diligence documentation upload, and the strength of the match funding arrangements. And once again, the key dates for the deliverables required during the appraisal process cannot be missed, as it will result in delays of the appraisal. It's very important further to take note that the support received from the Jobs Fund project team doesn't guarantee that the Jobs Fund Investment Committee will approve your project. The Investment Committee's decision is independent and final. However, we can assure applicants that we are motivated to get your applications approved. Are there any unanswered questions, Xavier, in the chat? Anything that anyone wants answered that's still unclear?
No comments, no question raised. Oh, let me just scroll down. Yeah, no, nothing. I thought maybe it was stuck. No, there's no comment, no questions. Yeah.
Okay, then thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time, and I wish you well with all your applications.
Okay. Over to the DDG for the closing remarks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, team. Nicely done. And to all the participants, wow, questions are intense and they were coming in fast and furious. But my team did try to catch up and, or rather keep up with all the questions coming through. So thank you so much to all of you for enriching this training session. We will, of course, go through all the questions and answers, and then we'll update our questions and answer sheet on the website and also on the GMS application site. I hope that there's appreciation that this document that will be required to be completed by you is quite intense. And so I encourage you to start soon, to call if you need help. You know, it's a bit of a twister and it can come across complex, but once you get the hang of it, you'll see it will work for you. So thank you to everybody who's participated. You will see there's now a timer on our website. And so watch the clock and ensure that you submit quality applications. The crisis in our country is at levels that I don't think anybody could conceive. And so we rely on all of you to submit those quality applications so that we've got real competition and real answers to addressing unemployment in our country. So good luck, everybody, the 5th of June at 3 p.m. I hope that all of you submit. Take care.